Hey there, welcome to episode 59 of the Cafe Genius Impresario's audio program. I'm your host, Dan Hugo. We're recording this on the morning of Friday, April 12, 2024. Today's episode, Advocatus, Diaboli. If you don't know what that means, you're fine. Intentionally obtuse as usual. I like to have interesting titles now and then. The very name Impresarios, spelled with two S's, intended to impart the notion that our entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem has creative impresarios within it or entering it, sometimes leaving it. And everything is hunky-dory, of course, unless we introduce the Advocatus, Diaboli. I really want to say Advocatus, but it's Advocatus, Diaboli. It's important to have someone who will point out the absurdities or at least take the opposing view. So that's what we'll talk about today. Although this episode will not be a comprehensive dive into this, more of an introduction into this notion, which I'll get to at the end. So stay tuned. Hopefully not a very long episode. I've been running over an hour on my various programs in recent days and weeks. And my voice is getting tired. Time for a weekend break, I think. So, what if everything is not great when it comes to entrepreneurialism in the Greater Vegas area? By the way, Greater Vegas, I use that term, which many people do. You could say Southern Nevada. You could say Clark County in particular. Clark County, Southern Nevada, Greater Vegas. They're all basically the same. There are caveats, of course, but what of the entrepreneurial ecosystem, the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem in the Greater Vegas area? What if the ecosystem is not strong? What if innovation culture is not healthy? What if the optimism, which we see so frequently in any headline that isn't about crime and politics, is often about the fun economy and certain optimism, unless you flip down below the fold or into the back pages? What if this optimism is misplaced? We should talk about it. We should talk about it frequently. But first, the links in your episode description, hopefully, wherever you have found this audio program. I've been talking about this for weeks, but somewhat ironically, or perhaps just apropos, content discovery in our Greater Vegas area is not always so easy. There are many influencers, which I hope I am not one. I think that's kind of a loaded term. But many individuals and groups who are creating content will publish on a YouTube channel or on social media like Instagram, and you discover them as you may. So a way to more easily discover social media platform content creation, that is, how do you find the user on Instagram or on TikTok? Or, well, one way is a content creator here in the Greater Vegas area might say, hey, come and find me over here. And if we make tools using modern technology that enable that more easily, you could call it something as simple as a directory, but hopefully it'll be a little bit more interesting than that. But hey, I'm in Vegas. I create content. I'm whether it's Norma or what's his name, Vegas Phil, or Jacob, or Misery Bell, great foodie, pretty much everywhere. I don't know how she eats all that stuff. So there are various characters around, and you may discover them, you may encounter them, you may come across them, you may be shown their content in some sort of a For You page or recommendations, etc., etc. So it's sort of haphazard, which is a pretty good indication in general about how the Greater Vegas area treats information about anything. So finding these things is a little bit tricky, and that includes this episode and this program, which are presently found in the usual back corners. If you happen to find us on Spotify or maybe Amazon Music, still need to register for iTunes. I sort of have a moral issue with iTunes requiring full sign up for an account, which the last time I checked required credit card verification just to add my audio programs to their index so that iPhone users who use iTunes might find my programs. That's sort of ick. So along those lines, my buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo profile is where I have initial links which point to my various projects in various places. The listen section has links to my 4 weekly audio programs. They're presently they're hosted on Spotify, but the link goes to the Spotify for Podcasters profile, which has a couple of other locations. You can listen there on the webpage. You can subscribe to that. You can subscribe to other places, like I said. It's not great. It's not an ideal platform. And I am always a strong advocate for self-publication. A primary point of publication for one's content should be the one that you control, the one that you own, perhaps. So to that end, as I've said before, the self-publication of these audio programs is essential, and it fits into a larger My Community project. So my excuse, as always, is there's a lot to do. And it's sounding even lame to even me. But buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo, you can track down not only the current state of affairs as I'm speaking today, but hopefully, fingers crossed, when you are listening to this episode somewhere in the future, somewhere after April 12, maybe after May 12, but somewhere in the future, if you are flipping through the archives, you will be able to visit the buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo profile page without any requirement that you buy anyone any coffee. Although we are powered by coffee, but there's no obligation to purchase anything, to spend any money. But there is one of the places where an updated collection of links that point to primary points of publication that are owned per audio program. There is a quagglingsand.com domain that I own. There is an ffstalk.com domain that I own. cafegenius.org. Got it. innovateforvegas.org. I don't personally, it's property of the foundation, of course, but similar idea. So we should always be publishing our own content where we are and sharing it to other places. So you will, in the future, always be able to listen to these shows where you find them, unless they do a Google Podcast strategy and shut down. Always possible. Another reason to own your own stuff. So anyway, that's a long way of saying check out that buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo profile page if you are looking for my various projects, including audio programs, and I will update it accordingly in the near term as the content creator discovery notion hopefully gets a little bit of attention here in the Greater Vegas area. And as well, my ko-fi.com/DanHugo, ko-fi.com/DanHugo. I'm going to, once we get that going, once we get the personal point of publication, we can point directly to the hosted primary URL, if you will, the canonical URL. Just post that. Say, hey, find our show here, find our show here. And you'll always be able to find them in these alternate locations so long as they continue to allow it and exist and so on. But to have a primary place that you own, the classic, my account got shut down, or my account got suspended, or I'm not allowed to, these are silly things. That is extremely unlikely to occur in the case of the programs I produce at this point, but you never know. You never know. So you should always be able to find content for anything you consume, any of your exciting interests and things you find useful or informative or important. You should be able to find them regardless of whether their host or their platform. Their host hopefully won't pull shenanigans. But if somebody relies overly on Facebook or Instagram and they suddenly decide, we're not going to show your stuff as often, et cetera, et cetera. So if somebody's interested in what you're doing, they should be able to find you and interact with you directly. My opinion. I only have 3 links today because I really don't this episode is not intended to be a deep dive, although ideally in the future, the Advocatus Diaboli would deep dive into various topics. So this is a smattering by way of example, but this is more of a meta discussion about this notion, not about the individual topics and issues, and there are many. So I have a link here, the F1 Big Winners and Losers, on LV Sports Biz, which I believe is a local business owner who is also interested in sports. So there's a quick rundown from March 19th, 2024, the Clark County debriefing on the Formula One race, which ended up costing Clark County, and if you're in the Southern Nevada area, you're probably in Clark County, not essentially, but probably. There are other places to be, but Southern Nevada, Clark County, almost one and the same. So Clark County lost money on Formula One. And if you are a small business owner that was near the track route, if you were impacted by the construction before or after, if your foot traffic or vehicle traffic was altered, if it was impossible for people to find you, if it was difficult for you to get your deliveries, generally speaking, if you were not Formula One or one of the resorts that was capitalizing on the visitors, the tourism, Formula One fans visiting and paying tons of money to do so, you may have lost money. So when you saw initially that the Formula One race was a big win, you have to read down below a few paragraphs and see who those winners actually are or were. And it isn't necessarily the people. And I'm not trying to sound like a populist, or, well, maybe I am a populist. I'm not trying to sound like the us, them thing, but it is important to ponder what is probably most frequently discussed, the notion of public funding, public monies, public risk, and then private rewards, private profits, and so on. So if the public bears the risk and then the profits all go to private entities, the public with a net loss, and individuals in the public also facing those losses, where some people at the top are enriched. This doesn't really this is just sort of common sense, right? Like, wait a minute. I guess someone could argue the Pareto principle works out. But it's something that we should at least be aware of. Knowing is half the battle, and sometimes the other half. The majority of fans, majority not fans, the majority of not fans of the Oakland A's deal. So the majority of the population of the impacted majority in the greater Vegas area are not fans of spending public money on the A's, on the Oakland A's future Las Vegas Athletics, I believe it is, however they settle that name change. Some 350, I think it is, more than $300 million in public funding has been put into the stadium project, and generally moving this baseball team, which nobody likes the A's, let's be honest, moving them to what will soon be the former site of the Tropicana is going to cost a lot of money and will take a lot of time. It will have a substantial impact on traffic, of course. This is nothing new here in Vegas. So how do people feel about it? Well, it looks like people are not big fans. And of course, there's a teacher effort to get the public funding rescinded. That's something that should make an appearance on the front pages of things. If the Nevada Supreme Court, I believe it is, going to be deciding that, if they haven't already. So the entire topic of the stadium, given that it is $300+ million, it might go up, who knows, $300 million of public funds, not to mention the environmental impact before, during, and after the construction. How will that impact businesses nearby? How will that impact general traffic flow, et cetera, et cetera. So these are things that may be relegated to the back page or the bottom of the web page. If you read as most people do, read news online now. Is there a print version of the review journal? I haven't seen lately. So if the majority of people are not fans of this, that should be news. It should be more news than it has been. So that's a I should point out, yeah, LV Sports Biz was the first one. The Cron, Channel 4, has a report on this. There should be generally available information. It should not be incumbent upon a particular news station to take on an issue that should be very important, but ends up being a niche topic. The stadium gets coverage wall to wall. Everybody's very excited about this when things move, when things change. But the subtle details are often left to chance. And watch out for private equity. The Nevada Current, which I enjoy their efforts, they're still publishing traditional media format. So it's written word, inverted pyramid, headline, provocative. They kind of have a FARC or a sardonic wit, if you want, or sort of a slash dot, if you're a slash dot fan. So catchy, snarky, still relevant news, and probably motivated with sincere interest in the goings on, but still a traditional news outlet. It would be interesting to include their reporting in our project. I think they publish under Creative Commons, so we'll have to check that out. But they go into something that is becoming more of a problem just in general in the world, private equity. One of the topics that they do highlight is a huge concern in the greater Vegas area, which is generally housing, the availability of what people call low-income housing. Sometimes people automatically assume that is BMR, below market rent, I think they call it here. Sometimes below market rate. Below market rent housing, this is housing that is placed with a monthly rent below fair market rent, which is sort of the prevailing rate in a particular geographical area. So housing is a problem. There's a huge gap in inventory of low-income housing. There are construction projects ongoing to build more apartment complexes. From where I am right now, if my windows were actually open, I could probably see. No, I'm not facing the right direction. If I were on the other side of the building, I could see 2 construction projects for high-density housing. The question is, who is buying up properties and housing projects during the pandemic? Who was buying up properties? Who is charging you rent every month? Is it a property owner that you would speak to like a normal human being? Is it a property management company? Or is it a private equity investment company that is treating the property like just another investment? And they really want to, they would be fine if rents doubled, if that puts more money in their pocket. So if they are truly rent seeking and could bail at any time, hey, there's an opportunity if we sell off these properties and screw everybody over. So if you read the article, the housing topic jumped out just because it's just a thing that makes the headlines, but I don't think it makes the headlines in a realistic way. Oh yeah, rents are high. Okay, yeah, home ownership is difficult. Housing prices are up. Interest rates. These things are thrown around as though they are individual stories, but it's part of a larger picture. If your population cannot live here, a lot of things change. And we saw this during the pandemic. People were priced out. People in the service industry in particular, priced out. So they left the area to find somewhere else to live that they could afford to live and also have work that would enable that. It's something to think about rather than some of the hype articles that you will frequently see. Like, one of my favorites is the Review Journal published. Thousands of businesses have moved to Nevada. And then if you read down, I think the 3rd paragraph or so, over the last 10 years. So if we're very excited about manipulated headlines for shock value and hype, and then those get published on LinkedIn and they get thousands of likes from colleagues that are just as excited about headlines as anyone else, and nobody reads the articles. So how to tell if we are in need of an Advocatus Diaboli? There's a historical perception that a press entity somewhere, the press, is taking an advocacy role. Speaking of Advocatus, an advocacy role for the general population. They often seek the truth and write about it or talk about it on formerly the major media channels, your local news station, etc. Now people can do it through a Substack newsletter, although don't use Substack. Or maybe they have a YouTube channel, or they do a podcast, or maybe you have a combination of different media options that they can exercise. It truly is an embarrassment of riches that we have. And they often will ask the hard questions. They will dive deep and construct the picture of what is relevant and what goes on so that we, the general population, can say, oh, okay, somebody is finding out this information and they are becoming something of an expert in maybe not the science or the methodology, but they're becoming an expert in this incident on which they're reporting, the path that brought, a certain scenario to a head at some point. So they are doing the due diligence, and we must extend some trust that they are doing this. And I've argued before that entrepreneurialism should not be someone else should do that. So at one point, an entrepreneur will have to acknowledge that they cannot do everything. So I acknowledge that, but you also cannot rely completely on someone else doing something. So at least becoming aware of these efforts, the people, the personalities, the resources, the infrastructure of how information is shared, whether it's trustworthy, whether it is slanted, and of course there's always bias. So I'm not suggesting you can magically erase bias, but even the most entrepreneurial entrepreneur has to defer, delegate, allow for other people doing things sometimes. So we hope that there is some sort of a media presence, a press population of professional, journalistically minded reporters, investigative journalists, what have you, that are doing the work, so to speak. Is there such a resource in the greater Vegas area? At least one. Does Southern Nevada have the infrastructure and culture in place to enable this transparency? However difficult, I don't know. The Las Vegas Sun and the Review Journal are statutorily, if you look up and I did look up the code, I don't have it in front of me, I didn't note this, but if you look up the code for use of the city seal was actually the thing I was looking at. There's a particular ordinance. You can actually see that there are certain rules about where you place the seal and it has to be approved and all that. And then right in there, like one or two numbers down, ordinances down on that list, you will find the papers of record in the statutes. Las Vegas Sun, Review Journal. So these are our official news sources, recognized by our local government. Not sure if they're doing a sufficiently good job. And by the way, it's important not only for people who live in a particular locality to know what's going on, but if you're considering relocating a business here, if you're part of the Locate program that the LVGEA, the Las Vegas Global Economic Alliance, has been driving with their $2 million in funding to try to get big business to relocate or at least open an office in the greater Vegas area to bring their money to our economy, you should know, if you're in that group of companies, that there are issues that are maybe lopsided risk. And by the way, those might benefit you. It might be good to know that the local government, city, county, even state might favor public risk, private profit. Maybe this is the place to bring your business to accept public monies for your risky projects and construction and so on, and then keep the profits. That sounds like a great deal. I should get in on that. So it's difficult to service an uninformed public if they don't know that they're uninformed. It could also be tricky to provide the service of information sharing to a public that doesn't know that such a service exists. So they may know that they don't know, and they seek information in the worst places. Instagram. I have seen things announced on Instagram, but I'm not a big user of Instagram anymore, so I mostly scroll through without interacting with things, just to get a feel for what goes on, literally. And there are things that you find on Instagram, and Instagram makes it very difficult to link and share and so on. They've taken a path away from the open internet, and that has been pointed out by many people over the years. So you'll find things on Instagram that it's not easy to find them in other places. There is a journalistic practice now where you go to a profile link in the Instagram profile, and you have a collection of stories that are linked by the Instagram picture. So really, technically, you could be just going to that page rather than stumbling upon the Instagram post. Instagram reorders posts and presents them in such a way that they maximize their own either short-term or long-term gains through user engagement, through clicking on paid advertisements, and so on. So you're not even guaranteed that you'll see a headline in a timely way. You could see something 3 days later. Hey, be sure, don't miss this event. It's coming up this weekend. Oh, that was 3 days ago. So Instagram is not ideal, but it is a channel to reach people. Are you seeing everything? That's always a question. So if people are placing trust in Instagram, which is a third party with a profit motive, their KPIs may not match yours, your key performance indicators. We want you to click on ads. Well, I'm just looking to figure out what's going on in my city. We're on different pages. One of us is making money. The headlines in local press and the headlines and assertions shared on your favorite media platforms and elsewhere may not be painting an honest picture. That's the question. Are you getting the full picture? Are you getting something that's clickbait? Are you getting something that will lead you to want to click on something in Instagram, or will lead you to want to follow through on an ad-laden page of content or so on? So what's the motive? Is the motive to get your eyeballs or to inform you? I don't know. Might be the former. So I only provided a couple of examples, a tiny topical sampling, if you will, in the link section, right? The Formula One losses, public losses, private profit. The majority of our population here in Southern Nevada are not fans of public money going for the A's, the stadium, and whatever else. And issues with private equity, especially when it comes to housing, private equity places some of our economic considerations at risk, maybe even some of the people that make our economy go. This tiny sampling is an indication, though, that the fun economy dominates. So even though people talk about housing, they're really excited about the fun economy. Even though they talk about being the next Silicon Valley, they're really excited about the fun economy. And why? Because the fun economy is making money. In particular, the gaming, professional sports, tourism. Conventions are making a comeback still. Each convention is possibly a step towards, a return to the normal visitor numbers and attendance at these actual shows and so on. So the fun economy is doing well. And I have said several times, even though I'm not a fan of the person at UNLV that is driving the trademark effort of fun economy and so on, it is not an incorrect emphasis. It's not wrong. So even though there's AB 77, even though we're going to be the next Silicon Valley, our innovation hub rivals that of San Francisco Bay Area, none of these are true. Real money goes for the fun economy. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Hollywood 2.0, which I'll get to in a moment. We're seeing these decisions made with public monies. And these, things like AB 77, things like the headlines, like I said, thousands of companies are moving from California. I think it was from California to Vegas. And again, it was specifically that it was over a 10-year period that was left sort of to the diligent reader. The headline sounded like, wow, this has been a crazy couple of months. But no, it's been a crazy decade. And even then, that may or may not be a real indication of net, 10,000 people move and then 10,000 people leave over that same period, or if they leave shortly after, or if they fail during the pandemic or after. So there are a lot of details hidden in the headline that you don't often find. So unfortunately, these decisions are being made with the public monies and place the risk and losses in the public part of the ledger, are not necessarily getting covered where the huge profits and big wins go to the top of the headlines, top of the news. That's why Formula One is coming back for next year. It was a huge success for some. So you really have to do some reading. And, the Formula One race itself was November 12th. I can't remember the exact day. It was the first half of November. I was out of town strategically. I was visiting my parents in Phoenix. So between early November, and by the way, we were only hearing scant details about construction prior. We do know that the trees were removed in front of the Bellagio fountains. That got headlines. You gotta be extreme when it comes to silliness. So those things got headlines, but we are now in. So let's say it's 4 months later. Am I getting that right? Yeah. No, 5 months later. So November, December, January, February, March, April. 5 months. Yes, I can count. Thank you. 5 months later, and we're talking about real losses. Okay, it was 2 or 3 weeks ago when the county did this debrief, but we're talking about actual quote unquote truth and the real losses, costs in public money, and we're not even really touching on the potential for lawsuits and other attempts at recovering real losses by small businesses, the real impact it had before, during, and after due to construction and detours and other chaos. So there's a huge emphasis on the fun economy, but sometimes we're not really paying attention to the second order effects of that fun economy. The issues with private equity will be interesting. It's something to keep an eye on. It's something that will almost certainly get attention because of the real estate industry here, whether they will report on it as though individuals are important, or whether they treat everything as a real estate investment and the trading of real estate, that is being a real estate agent or commission sales or brokering or the rental market. So there's the business side of housing, and then there's the human side. So it remains to be seen whether the private equity impact on housing will be made evident in coming months and even years from the perspective of pure investment and the business of housing, or if it will take on a flavor of humanity, which is something important if you are trying to find a home and you can't afford to live here, or if you're trying to find a home and you don't match the background check and income requirements and pay history, making it difficult sometimes even for entrepreneurs to have a workforce that can live here. Depending on where you are in your timeline of forming a company or bringing talent from other places, it's not necessarily trivial. So there is something to know beyond the fun economy, even though the fun economy is very important. So the things we don't hear about, though, the things I didn't mention any links for, because there's a sort of a link for Hollywood 2.0, which I've talked about, but these are things we don't really hear about too often. Is Hollywood 2.0, yeah, in true Las Vegas tradition, why not call something original? Hollywood 2.0, yet another public risk, private profit scenario. Is it? Is that what it is? Maybe. It depends on how much public money ends up going into that first studio project in Summerlin. And it depends on how they are paying for the resources at the Harry S. Reid Tech Park, which is a UNLV endeavor. Are any public funds going to that? Are they sponsored, or how is that working? But these are resources that will be focusing on a particular vertical. So they're focusing on movie production, the media companies like Sony, and celebrity presence like Mark Wahlberg. He and his family moved to Las Vegas probably over a year ago now. He is a strong advocate for legislative change that will favor incentive programs and general benefit extended to movie production companies. And ideally, that will all trickle down to people who actually live here. There's some expectation, I think, that some of the movie-related, production crew and so on will relocate to the Vegas area, but that is not necessarily a given, and yet there will still be impact on people who do live here, do try to operate businesses here. Kind of smacks of a Formula One scenario. So we'll see. There's already been some protesting on the part of people living and working or having businesses near the proposed, I think it's beyond proposed now, I think it's been accepted, construction site for the Summerlin movie production facilities. So yeah, we'll see what comes of it, but it'll be interesting to see what information is shared about not only the nature of the funding and the risk and profit pathways, so often divergent, But what about things like water and power? What will be the impact of this thing? Are they? I'm sure there's been an EIR, environmental impact report, on specifically water, given the sensitivity we have here to water. But it will be interesting to see what comes of the total environmental impact on people, businesses, transportation through the area, etc. And then what comes of it. By the time all this is done and the incentives are in place, is this going to be yet another situation where education got less money and people had direct material impact, negative impact on their businesses? And the headlines are all about how Mark Wahlberg produced yet another movie at the new Summerlin facility. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see if the past is prologue. I attended a presentation recently. It was not hours and hours. It was probably more about 30 to 45 minutes concerning some of the economy of Nevada, how it impacts Southern Nevada. The one issue that I thought was sort of interesting was a 10-year plan to spend more on education. This was an oral presentation, so I didn't write down the number that was said. I want to say it was something like $6 billion over 10 years, but don't quote me on that. So there was a number though that was 2 to 3 times, I think, what would have been spent there. So there's a proposal, or there's an effort to double or triple spending over this interval to try to improve education, because as we know, sprinkling money on top is all you need. Right. So I thought it was interesting because the way certain things are reported, you will only see that the government wants to spend more money on education. People that are advocates for education will say, finally, it's about time. And then when you read things like the Gigafactory, the Tesla project received tax incentives that took money out of education budget line items in the form of incentives to this private entity. And I don't mean it's a public company, but it's a company. It's not a public good, so to speak, not directly. So money was moved from education to incentive. That could happen with Hollywood 2.0 as well. So what does it mean to double spending on education or more, right? Whatever those numbers actually were. Apparently the argument is that, what are we going to get? How can we spend all this money? What's in it for us? Kind of thing. This profound lack of understanding for the value of an informed and educated public on that public's economy. So our locality could always do with smarter people. There is a notion from some, if you talk about relocating businesses here, for example, $2 million spent on the Locate program for 16 companies that they're approaching to move people here, move their company and their people, hire people here, but more likely bring employees to the area, or import talent is the common way it's expressed here. Import the talent. Well, that could have an impact on cost of living, but it also is an admission of guilt of sorts, that the talent pool here is not suitably flexible where it could be. About a year and a half, about a year ago, I came across some presentations about our current educational situation in the Southern Nevada area, that there is a focus on educational curriculum and programs and focus on training workers, so employees that are destined to work for other people in a place that is touting itself as a strong entrepreneurial ecosystem player. I think this is at odds. But if there's not an understanding that increasing investment in quality education, so don't throw good money after bad, but if you invest in quality education, you end up with a flexible talent pool / workforce that may be starting companies that are successful, maybe joining companies in a successful way to make them more successful, may be available to work for these companies they want to invite, rather than inviting more people from faraway places and possibly gentrifying communities with higher rents and so on. This happened many times when you bring when California workers would sell their homes, move to other localities and buy homes for cash. They would bid up selling prices, move into the house they want, pay cash, no worries. And if you are not moving into the area of California with your big sell on your ridiculously inflated property from there, then you maybe don't get to own a home, or maybe you don't get to live anywhere. So there are ripple effects of these things that I think nobody really talks about. or that need to be either talked about or made more apparent. One way you could do that is by asking the hard questions, but presenting this picture as though it were like a weather report. I know people get tired of hearing about like political campaign stuff, and their topics are, I keep hearing about this. Everybody checks the weather every day. Why is that? Because it has a material impact on what their plans are for the day. It can always change. There may be certain scenarios like heavy rain or heavy wind or warnings of heavy wind levels. Oh, it's going to be extra windy on First Friday. We have to cancel the First Friday artwork events. Suddenly it's very material. So maybe you're checking the weather before Friday. Maybe you check it the next morning and say, I knew it. The wind wasn't that bad. Because some people don't know the impact of heavy winds on tents and booths in a outdoor festival. And if you do know, you're like, well, you have to deal with possibilities. So an informed public would understand the value of investment in quality education, and they might even take the time to ask, okay, if you're spending more money on this, are we getting more quality in our education, or are we just throwing good money after bad? So these are the sorts of questions that should be asked. And I was sort of, I'll even say, appalled that during this presentation, it was an important person working for the state government, I believe. I'm not even going to say who it was, but just suffice to say that this person should not have been so hand-wavy. But I have to point out that at the same presentation, there was another person from a city office that made a reference to the state of Nevada. The Secretary of State has a resource for state businesses if you want to apply for, create, incorporate, etc. You go to the Silver Flume, F-L-U-M-E, Flume, Silver Flume. I think it's .com, but if you type in Silver Flume, you'll find it. He said, I don't even know why they call it Silver Flume. And your first response should be, why are you getting up and telling people in a presentation that you don't know something that you could have checked immediately prior to stepping up in front of people? So my concern there was like, you should know that this is the Silver State. That should have come up at some point in your travels, since you work for, in this case, the city. But if you're going to be referring to a state resource and you wonder daily, why is it called that? There's got to be a way to get an answer to that question. And then during the presentation, there were some statements made that, I get this question all the time. And I always ask people, if you get the same question every day, like, why is it Silver Flume? Or any number of things. You have a website. You have resources that you can update, documentation, frequently asked questions. It's right there in the name. So I said, if you get these questions all the time, why are you not updating the answers so that people don't have to ask the questions? They can just find it. I don't even have to ask. There's the answer. And he kind of shrugged. So he's still trying to figure out why it's called Silver Flume. So what about public resources? What about those public resources? Funds, staff time, infrastructure that connect members of a private mailing list to meetups that are only made visible. They're only aware of these on the private mailing list because they've received notification that there is a meetup. I don't know that they check at the door, but I did not attend, so I don't know. With the stated goal to connect the attendees on that private mailing list so that they might make private deals or otherwise gain private benefit. This sounds like I'm being pedantic, but let's think about this. If the role of a particular city organization, staffers in a particular division or group, depending on how your city is organized. So if you are tasked with urban and economic development and you spend public money to organize events for a limited subset of potential future winners that you are selecting, and you spend those public funds to host events with the stated intent, this is stated, that the goal is to connect people so that they might make business deals, enter into contracts, and so on. You are funding with public monies private benefit. On the surface, it's no big deal. It's a couple $100. But this mindset is not about elevating an ecosystem. It is about selecting winners. this is something to be aware of, because if you choose to relocate or start a business in the greater Vegas area, you must be aware that unless you are in the good graces of the powers that be, you may be left on the side of the road. And I will speak from experience, this happens. So if you don't shake the right hands or get on the right list, you may be left out. And that is something essential to consider in the face of, are my future employees going to be able to live here? Is housing going to continue to be an issue? Can their children, if they have them, get a good education in this area? And this is a factor for some people considering relocation here. I've talked to them. They say it. The schools here are horrible. I don't know if I want my kids to live here. Well, wait, Mark Wahlberg has said his kids are thriving. I will wager $1 that they are attending private schools, which are a different story here in the Clark County School District, as they are geographically near or in it. Private schools are totally different. So when you hear from people that their kids are doing great, ask them which public school they're attending, and they almost certainly are not. So what next? I am considering a new program, so the Impresarios program will remain. As I've said before, I really want to get some entrepreneurs to discuss, so talk about what they're working on, talk about their challenges, how they overcome them, and so on. This should be a resource for impresarios who are making things happen. The entire focus of the Cafe Genius project is our entrepreneurial ecosystem, which I now have taken to calling the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem. Is it working? Is it not working? What can we do? And let's hear from you. And let's hear from different kinds of entrepreneurs, not the same 300 people that make up the startup scene in the greater Vegas area. By the way, did you know that if you open a restaurant, you could be an entrepreneur, but you're not invited implicitly to Tech Alley? Oh, they're just doing tech stuff. So the messaging, the private lists, the belief that we're the next Silicon Valley, why don't we just be a really great place for people to start businesses? Why don't we emphasize the fact that there are 40 million people visiting here and connect local business with these visitors? Oh, but they must go on the strip and stay at resorts so that the big money can make more money. So it's something to think about. So should there be a channel or a new resource that focuses specifically on asking the hard questions, as though the what is it? Advocatus Diaboli. Am I saying that correctly? I'm not looking at it, so from memory. We need someone to ask questions with skepticism, not softballs. And I will admit right now, when I had my first podcast interview with Mo Collins, who authored the paper, which I linked to too much, and I should stop because nobody cares about it. It's not a great report. When I had her on the first time, it wasn't, I'm not going to say it was softballs, but I definitely did not press her on some of the things, mostly because we had our interview immediately after it was published. So I had like a week to read it. Now it will be a year, I think, on the 29th. So it came out April 29th, 2023. This many, a year later, I would ask things like, why did you not delve into the lack of innovation culture? Why did you not examine why our education system is not fueling a talent pool that will be an essential component of a future ecosystem, right? You can't just look at the present, which is the educational concern. I don't know if I said this. The education should be about jobs available today. Really? So if I had a part 2 with Mo, and since Mo has left her own company, I don't see that happening, but I haven't really asked her yet. I would bring up the topics like, why did you focus completely on the warm introduction model, which we talked about during the show? She was introduced to a select group of people. They are not a representative sample of the entrepreneurial ecosystem here. So I think it was way too soft. It was paid for by people who wanted to hear good news. So there was an honest extension of interest into the communities, quotes, in the startup scene in the state, and then in Washoe County, Clark County, and then the more rural areas of the middle of Nevada. So it looked good, but I think there were too many gaps that become apparent if you really consider what was said, what was written, and then what was not said and what was not written, and how the paper, the research, the report was constructed and executed and constructed. So I think if we have better information sharing tools, which is of course the focus of the MyMuni project, so I'm sort of plugging that project, but the reason that project exists is because there is a need for something like it, and I am working on it. So I'm sort of plugging my own efforts here, but it's an essential need. And the MyMuni project will be open source. So if we can work on something that others want to collaborate on, they may come up with even better solutions to things. So I will simply disclose that I'm working on something in this area. Who knows? I might even attempt to make some money on it at some point. But I'm doing something that you don't get so frequently here. I'm telling you up front. So the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, though, which I'm the managing director of, is pursuing an open community information sharing platform to operate at city scale, to be extensible, and so on. So if we have a platform, the tooling, the methodology, and we can share actual information rather than headlines and hype, if you can actually see what's happening with a baseball stadium, with public monies going to it, with a movie studio, with the state of education, with the disparity in access to resources and different demographics, different economies, within microeconomies, I guess, within our communities, within our greater Vegas area, that would be great. There would be actual tangible value, public good. An informed public is better equipped to make decisions and to understand decisions that are being done to them. Wait, you spent my money on Formula One and now you got screwed over? Who thought that up? Oh, the same people that thought up this other thing and the stadium and that's all the same people. They could make an information awareness easier if we had these things, these tools, and if we collectively agree that there are some gaps to fill in that information awareness, the path to information, and that we want to see them filled, then hey, we could all sort of in a feedback loop make informed public a real thing and even demand it. Maybe the Las Vegas Sun and the Review Journal are not the best choices as our papers of record. Maybe they were just there at the right time. Maybe Sheldon Adelson had something to do with it. Who knows? Am I saying his name right? I don't know. He passed away. He's not going to argue with me. So there you go. I think there is a need for some serious devil's advocacy. By the way, if you didn't know, that's what the title of the show is. In Latin, it's an actual job position, or it was, at the Vatican concerning canonization. It was the person who would represent the possibility that they're wrong. Right? Like, ask the hard questions, be skeptical. So if we have that resource as part of our information sharing program, not everything is a matter of sharing hype headlines, believing that it's going to blow. I've heard this said, it's going to blow up here with the startups. Why? Why is it? Because we said it is, not because we're doing anything that actually enables that. To know whether businesses, companies, startups are finding success here, what they need to find success, what's working, what isn't. These are things I've been talking about for many episodes of many programs now, from at least 2 or possibly 3. The FFS Talk program, I know I talk about this, certainly on this program, and every once in a while, the Innovate for Vegas, Let's Innovate for Vegas. I've talked about the tooling and the projects that are related to this. And don't even get me, speaking of that, don't even get me started on this ridiculous everything is orange website or whatever. In its infinite brilliance, our Regional Transit Commission believes that tossing all aspects of accessibility and user interface design out the window and making everything orange on a website, the same color as traffic cones, is in some way sensible. It is a travesty. I don't even know what to say. So that seems like a good time to end the episode then. If I don't know what to say, that's a rarity. Let's all take advantage of it. Thank you, as always, for listening. And I do want to pursue this. And it's either going to be a new audio program or possibly the introduction to streaming. I think there's a place for an audio program where people don't have to worry about their background and their hair and makeup, as I like to say. to be able to just talk about business-related, entrepreneurial, ecosystem-related things, talk radio style. So maybe the Advocatus, Diaboli could be a streaming program, actual conversation. Look people in the eye, listen to them say things like, "Oh, we thought Formula One was a good idea," and it still is for a couple people. So anyway, I will leave it there. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for visiting the buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo profile page. You don't need to buy me any coffees, but you can find various links there. Every time I look at that page and I think about editing it, I'm not a fan. It's a utility. It is not a trophy. I'm not hanging my profile on my mantle at home. I don't tell all my friends about it. It's a place to find links. There are a couple of people who've actually thrown some money into the coffee chip jar, if you like. Although I'm not a fan of tipping. But if there's a value for value, tipping, by the way, I am not being paid to do this. So there's no mistake. You're not augmenting a salary that doesn't exist. If there's a value for value model, you find something valuable you want to support in the future, great. There you go. I'll leave it there. Check out the links. Watch for our primary point of publication website to become a reality any day now. Really, if I keep telling that to myself, perhaps it'll become true. And if I tell it to you, same thing. Thank you for listening. Take care.